Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. So yesterday, Fandango, the movie company where you can go and you can buy movie tickets and stuff for, released an article that was showing they did a poll with 8,000 people who've bought movies from them before, trying to figure out what are the most anticipated movies of next year, the most anticipated performances and stuff like that. And it was just like a regular anybody who goes to the movies. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, here's some critics or oh, here's some of these diehard movie fans. It's just people who go to the movies kind of casually. And they interviewed them. They had them pick which movies out of the list of movies they thought would be, most anticipated. And they had a top 10 list created. And I just kind of wanted to go through it because I thought it was a little interesting. So yeah, let's dive right into this. Okay, so before I actually get to the 10 movies that they listed as the most anticipated movies, I did want to talk about something I thought was kind of funny. They had listed the top 5 most anticipated performances by individual actors and stuff like that, and one of the ones on the list was Chris Pratt as Garfield, which I think is kind of crazy to think about because Chris Pratt as Garfield, I feel like is one of the most hated casting decisions that's coming out of any movies next year. So the fact that he's ranked number 4 on this list is very interesting to me. But that being said, I guess there's not a whole lot to choose from next year. But I mean, there's definitely a lot of movies coming out next year. I'm surprised that one's somehow on the top 5. But yeah, that being said, now we're going to dive into the top 10 movies that they are most anticipated next year. And I'm just kind of going to give you guys my rundown of why I think they're probably on this list. And then also how anticipating I am for it. So coming in at number 10, I believe this is the only horror movie on the list. It is the prequel to The Quiet Place. I believe it's called A Quiet Place Day One. I don't know how I feel about this one. I think that the first Quiet Place movie was pretty good. The second movie was okay. It still had a lot of the same cool aspects of it, and I think that the horror works relatively well in these movies. But I don't necessarily think they needed to make another one of these. That being said, I definitely think that since it is a horror franchise that's been out the last couple of years and it has been successful the last couple of years, that it's definitely something to look forward to. Personally, I'm not that looking forward to it, but I can see why some people would be. Coming in at number 9, we have Gladiator 2. I believe this one's going to be directed by Ridley Scott. I believe he directed the first one. And it's going to be starring Pedro Pascal. I believe Russell Crowe is supposed to be in it. I could be incorrect about that. And I'm very interested about this because, for one, the first Gladiator movie, it's a pretty solid movie, but it has a pretty solid ending. And I think that it really doesn't make sense to continue on the story. I don't know if this is supposed to be a prequel or what exactly is supposed to be happening with it. But I think that it has a decent cast and it has a good director tied to it, but overall, it's not necessarily my cup of tea. I think that I'll definitely go to see some beautiful cinematic shots and some really cool imagery, but I don't know overall how I'm going to like it as a movie. But that being said, I can understand why it's on this list. Once again, pretty famous director. It has Pedro Pascal, who's one of the hottest actors in the business right now. So overall, I think that one kind of makes sense where it is. Alrighty, and the number 8 one that they had on their list, this was a movie I didn't even know was coming out. I actually had to Google it and be like, what is this? And do a little bit of research on the project. But it's an upcoming Lord of the Rings movie. It's called Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim? I have no idea. It's a very interesting word, but basically it is a new Lord of the Rings movie, and it's going to be an animated movie, which I think is very interesting. And I know that the old Lord of the Rings movies are very, very popular, and I think that the book franchise is one of the most famous book franchises of all time. So there's definitely a lot of good source material here, and I think that animating it works really well with some of the mystical aspects of it. There's a lot of magic in the Lord of the Rings movies, and I feel like animation could bring opportunities to have certain magical creatures in it that you might not have been able to portray as good in an actual movie. And considering it's a war movie, I think that there should be some great action sequences in it. I don't know anybody who's in the cast or anything, but I will say I am looking forward to it now that I know it exists. I think that animation is finally getting a lot more respect, as it is a great medium to share movies in. So I'm anticipating it. I think it's going to be good. I don't necessarily have insanely high hopes for it because I know nothing about it. But that being said, once trailers and stuff start coming out, that might completely change, and I might be more excited for it or less excited for it. We'll just have to wait and see for that one. Coming in at number 7, we have Inside Out 2. I personally am incredibly excited for it. Next year, there's a pretty decent amount of good, high-quality animated movies that are supposed to be coming out, and I definitely think that this one is on the top of my anticipation list for it. I know that next year we're supposed to get, obviously, the Garfield movie is going to be a big one. We're supposed to get a Pixar movie, I think it's called Chow or something like that, but it's a guy who gets kidnapped and he goes to outer space and people thinks he's the like ruler of the world or something like that. That's supposed to come out early next year. I don't remember the name of it. And then there's supposed to be Inside Out 2, obviously another Pixar movie. There's supposed to be the Lord of the Rings movie, which I just mentioned. And then there was another really big one that was one of those companies. Oh, Kung Fu Panda 4. I think that there's a lot of really good animated movies that are coming out next year. And in my opinion, Inside Out 2 is kind of the one I'm anticipating the most. I think I have the most highest expectations for it. And I think that it's really going to... If it lives up to the first one, I think it'll be a really damn good movie. And I think that they're going to be going through puberty and dealing with a giant like wave of emotions that she's not used to dealing with. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting how they handle it. But like I said, if they stick the landing with it, which Pixar usually does, I'm expecting this movie to be incredible. So the fact that it's only number 7 does kind of shock me a little bit. I think that it being a Disney Pixar property, I would expect it to be a little higher up on this list. But I don't really know who they interviewed. They could have interviewed a giant range of anybody, and some people who are on the older side probably wouldn't be like, "Oh, Inside Out 2, yeah, that sounds amazing." But I think it's gonna be great. That one is one of my most anticipated movies of next year. Coming in at number 6, we have Despicable Me 4. Of all of the animated movies that are coming out next year, this one's kind of one of the ones that I'm least excited for. I think that the first Despicable movie is great. The second Despicable Me movie is pretty good. And then the third Despicable Me movie is relatively forgettable. It's not that great. I think that they keep using the Minions in literally everything. And it's became such a popular staple that it's like, obviously they can't do the Despicable Me franchise without the Minions. But like, Illumination is a film company that makes a bunch of animated movies, and I want to say they have only like 10 or 12 movies or something like that, and at this point it's like 6 of them have Minions in it, and I really wish that they would kind of like let the Despicable Me franchise go, or start focusing on younger villains who can have similar arcs to how Gru had his arc of starting off as a villain and then becoming a hero, because honestly I don't know what they're going to do with this movie, and I have very little hopes for it. Coming in at number 5, and this one is one that's shocking the internet right now because the fact that it's even on the top 10 is pretty interesting, but the fact that it's at number 5 is even more interesting to me. Venom 3. All I'm going to say about this is if they announced that Venom 3 is going to be rated R, I would agree with this, but as it stands, the first Venom movie was pretty okay. Like, it's pretty good. I will say it has a decent rewatchability to it, so I have seen it a couple of times since it came out at theaters, and like, it's fun. I think that it's one of those movies where it's like, if you cast literally anybody else as the main character, it's not going to work. It literally only works because Tom Hardy just goes absolutely crazy and he has a blast with the movie. He does iconic things like jumping in a lobster tank for no reason, and it's fun, right? Like, that first movie, super enjoyable. The second movie, Venom Let There Be Carnage, was really weird because at the same time, it felt super rushed, but it also felt like it was way too long, and it had a relatively short runtime for a superhero movie. So the fact that Venom 3 is on this is a little interesting to me. I wonder if some people who are voting on this were just like, it's a superhero movie. I like superhero movies and clicked it. Or if they know something I don't. But as of right now, my expectations for Venom 3 are pretty low. Coming in at number 4, I am shocked that this one isn't like top 2, but it's Dune Part 2. This is a huge franchise. This is an incredible cast that's coming. There's going to be a lot of really cool epic action sequences. There's going to be a lot of great CGI. It's filmed for the most part on set in an actual desert, which is beautiful, and I'm glad that they are going back to the roots of Hollywood and actually filming on location. Like, that's really nice and it's super refreshing. And overall, I feel like the Dune movies have an insane amount of hype. Like, when they released the trailer for the first Dune movie, it kind of blew up the internet. When they released the trailer that came out a couple of days ago, it very quickly became a very like popular trailer and that a lot of people were discussing and talking about. And another big thing about the Dune movies is there's a lot of like Oscars that typically go towards like this cast of people, and I feel like it's a huge thing. When they pushed it back, a lot of movies that were releasing this year decided that they weren't going to push their movies back anymore because Dune was out of Oscar nomination like season or whatever, so people were like, okay, yeah, we could keep our movies here. And I think that it's just interesting that a movie that is that big of a threat to Oscar nomination movies or whatever isn't considered that anticipated. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought that one was weird that it wasn't top two. Coming in at number three, I will say these top three are all really interesting to me. I don't know if I necessarily agree with some of the ones in this top three, but hey, to each their own with this. But coming in at number three, they have the upcoming new Ghostbusters movie, Ghostbusters: The Frozen Empire. I've seen a lot of people talking about this online. It doesn't seem like it is fully going to fit the Ghostbusters like feeling. Like the Ghostbusters is a very upbeat movie, and yeah, there's a lot of ghosts and there's a lot of people getting haunted and stuff like that, and there's typically, you know, cool final third act scenes where there's a bunch of giant ghosts going through New York or whatever and kind of wrecking havoc. But the Ghostbusters has always been relatively like an upbeat, like they're here to save the day type thing, and the trailer shows a bunch of people dying very gruesomely, very painfully, and they just kind of play it off as a joke. And I feel like this movie just looks like it's not going to be tonally that coherent. I feel like it's going to be a little all over the place, and it doesn't really seem to know what its target audience is, if it's going to be for people who prefer darker movies or if it's going to be for people who prefer lighthearted family comedy. And I think that might cost the movie a little bit, but it being this highly anticipated is throwing me off because I don't think Ghostbusters Afterlife was that well acclaimed. Like I don't think that much people were like, oh my god, this was amazing, let's hope they make another one. So this is another one of those ones where it's like, I feel like people just like did word association and they're like, oh, Ghostbusters, I like Ghostbusters, let's click that one. Because to me, I'm not really anticipating this movie that much. I think it's going to be all right. And I think that the graphics and stuff of it look good. And the concept of like an Ice King being able to like affect people is very interesting. But nothing else about it really seems to stick out to me. And then coming in at number two, they had BeetleJuice 2, which I think is incredibly interesting. Personally, I understand that BeetleJuice is a very popular character and he kind of is a iconic role, especially like amongst like theater kids. Like I personally was a theater kid and I had a bunch of friends who were in theater. We loved listening to the Beetlejuice musical, like Broadway and stuff like that. We've seen a lot of the like plays and scenes and stuff like that from the movies and the Broadway show. So it's a character that's been popular throughout the years or whatever, and it's been popular since way back then. And it's somebody who's always kind of been like a very iconic, you can't have Halloween without this character. So I definitely see why it's as popular as it is, and I think that the fact that Michael Keaton is returning for it and Winona Ryder is returning for it is a very huge thing. But I'm intrigued that one is above a lot of movies that are coming out next year that I would expect to have a little bit higher expectations. But that being said, I'm kind of looking forward to it. Honestly, as somebody who wasn't really a huge fan of the original movie, I think it's slightly overrated. I'm excited to see what they do with this one. I feel like Michael Keaton's been on a hot streak lately, and Jenna Ortega joining the cast is always huge. She's kind of a really big horror, like, scream queen right now, and I love it. But the fact that it's number two is very interesting to me. That's all I gotta say. I don't think that it's wrong that it's number two, but I think it's fascinating. And now, their number one selection for this was Deadpool 3, which I think is so interesting. Deadpool 3, I definitely think is one of the most hyped superhero movies in a really long time. I think that some of the only movies that have really compared to the hype of Deadpool 3 is the Spider-Man No Way Home and both Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Those three movies have all had like an insane amount of hype, and so many people were like, oh my god, I can't wait to see what they do with this movie. This movie's going to be incredible. I really hope that this movie lives up to expectations. And I think that Deadpool is on that same boat with them. I think it's on the same tier as them. And I think that if it is the proper send-off to the Fox X-Men universe, which a lot of people are thinking it's going to be, it has potential to be one of the best superhero movies of all time. But that being said, if we just look at the Deadpool movies exclusively, Deadpool 1 was an incredible comic book movie. In my opinion, it's one of the best origin stories we've ever gotten in a comic book movie. And then we have Deadpool 2, which had way too many good ideas that they really should have like picked a couple of them to focus on. Instead, they kind of were like, yeah, let's go with every single one of these. And it felt like it had way too much going on in it, and it didn't juggle them very well. So I'm a little concerned that this movie is also going to have a lot going on, and it's not going to juggle it very well. That being said, seeing Hugh Jackman in the proper Wolverine costume is going to be great. Seeing Deadpool in the proper Deadpool costume, we've already seen that. I don't know why I was about to say that's a big thing. But, like, it's nice to see these characters getting justice and getting a good, like, final goodbye. Because I don't know if this is the last time we see Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, but it's kind of seemed like he doesn't plan on making any more Deadpool movies after this. And I don't really see him doing a lot of Avengers movies either. Like, I could see him cameoing in a couple of things, and it'd be really interesting if he started taking over, like, the Stan Lee cameo and he just shows up in the background of every movie. But I don't know. That being said, though, I do think that it is a very great movie. It's going to be a very great movie. And it is definitely in my top anticipation list. But mine's kind of because I'm a diehard Marvel fan. Like, I don't know. But yeah, that being said, I don't have a lot of movies that I'm surprised weren't on here. One of the main ones that I'm kind of surprised wasn't on here was Kung Fu Panda 4. I understand that this list did kind of come out before that trailer did. But DreamWorks has been hitting it out of the park for a really long time. And I think that with the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish being a sequel that came way after the fact, that was incredible. I think I'm going to be paying attention to any DreamWorks movie that's coming out anytime soon. But yeah, that's one of the only ones though that I'm like, wow, that's not on this list. That's kind of weird. I do kind of think that I think that Kraven's probably going to be better than Venom 3. And part of the reason I say this is because Kraven is going to be rated R. And it's going to have the Rhino in it, and it's going to have Chameleon in it, and it's going to have Kraven the Hunter in it. I think that movie has a lot of potential, and the fact that it got pushed back a lot makes me feel like they're reworking some things, and they're going to fix some continuity errors and stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know what else I had to say about this. But yeah, oh my god, I just said but yeah like 3 times. I'm so sorry. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. Bow, bow.